And what will happen now, we're going to have on the main stage at this moment, uncertain, how unsureness can drive lean success. In the parallel session, we have two options in parallel session, implementing lean and building a culture of continuous improvement, and also self-reliant lean. Okay, these are the other two parallel sessions. So here on the main stage, I will leave you guys with Sérgio Caldeirinha from Portugal. Olá, Portugal. And we will watch this session. Thank you. Thank you, Sérgio. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the place of the world where you are located. So this is a session put together by Lean Academy Portugal, which I represent. My name is Sérgio Caldeirinha, and I will welcome you all to, well, join Maggie Johnson, author of Uncertain, and Kata, Coach Tracy Defoe, for a conversation around strategic benefits of uncertainty for lean practice. What roles does uncertainty play in superior expertise? How does not knowing fuel adaptability? There's never been a better time for your team be skillfully unsure. So this is the kind of description that opens the theme. And throughout the sessions, you are more than welcome to put out your questions. I will keep an eye on those, and we'll get back to those on the last 5 minutes of our session. Okay? So, Maggie, why don't you start by defining uncertainty? And Maggie and Tracy, okay, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Sergio, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you and Tracy with all of you around the world to discuss uncertainty's wisdom and its links to Toyota Kata and to lean thinking. Now, the wisdom of uncertainties might seem a contradiction in terms from the get-go. Especially now, we fear and loathe rising unknowns and the unsureness they speak. We often, in business world and elsewhere, see uncertainty as synonymous with weakness and with inertia. But well, today we're going to dig into the new science of uncertainty, and that gives us a chance to update our often mistaken, insufficient understanding of this mindset. Uncertainty is really key to curiosity, to resilience, and to the theme of the conference, adaptability. And these are exactly the kind of cognitive skills we need in this time of change. We always will find uncertainty uncomfortable and challenging because humans need answers. So uncertainty is not the end goal. That's nothing that we'll espouse. But as we problem solve and innovate, uncertainty is now being revealed as truly a productive force. And this helps extend the fantastic practices of Lean and Kata, offering new strategies, new lens. So that definition is important. We'll just briefly define uncertainty because it's often seen as kind of a swampy word. There are two main kinds of uncertainty according to the latest science. First is aleatory uncertainty. That's really just the uncertainty out there. So it's what humans can't fully know. The volatility, the unpredictability that we try to assess with mathematical modeling and probabilistic reasoning, so we can get a likelihood of whether the storm that's reported in the newspaper or the media is going to do X amount of damage, but we don't fully know. The second main type of uncertainty is epistemic. We can think of that as our uncertainty, our psychological uncertainty, and that is just definitely the human response to the unknown. So we might hear of the storm report and we realize we have reached the limits of our knowledge about the climate that day, but there's a hint of multiple possibilities. You know, just if you're barreling along and you're trying to get to a meeting, for instance, to use another scenario, and you hit a traffic jam, you know, you might be able to use the app to get around it. You might make the meeting or not. You can see there's a hint of multiple possibilities. So the world is full of surprises, but we can learn to wield uncertainty skillfully to get ahead in times of dynamic change.
Very nice. So, Tracy, getting or joining you along into the session, how does this match with Toyota Kata?
Well, Toyota Kata is all about seeking to extend and not just apply our lean knowledge, right? So there's Toyota Kata is a duo of practices that Mike Rother studied and codified for us into basically a way to becoming better at not just applying lean tools or problem solving, but really approaching big challenges. And it is a together activity. So there's always a coached activity. And I'm sure many people in the lean community have been curious about Kata or perhaps are practicing. We certainly embrace uncertainty, and we want to get to that, what we call the threshold of knowledge, or as a educator, I think of it as the edge of what we know, so that's where we learn. And if we are there together and we have a structured way of approaching a tough challenge, we can be calm and sort of scientific in our thinking, look for evidence, look for hypotheses, and also keep it up every single day. So it becomes a habit and a part of our work culture.
So great to know. So this is a great start. So we have the uncertainty definition, then we have the Kata, coach or improvement definition. Let's try bring it together. So we have come up with some questions, right? So our audience can explore a little bit wider and further into the thing. So Maggie, to you, what key role does uncertainty play in superior expertise?
Yes, and I think that this also plays it particularly into the 4 steps of improvement Kata. So when I began to investigate uncertainty, which was a little studied and, as I say, insufficiently understood concept and mindset, the first question that rose to mind related to expertise. And in particular, I wondered to myself as I started investigating, does uncertainty have a role to play in the most high stakes, high pressure moments? Would you want a surgeon to be unsure in the operating room, your surgeon? So I actually started off going to Toronto, Canada, and embedding myself in the operating room, watching surgery. And I had a guide, a world-renowned expert on surgical judgment, Carol Ann Moulton. She helped me understand what was going on, and she's a surgeon in herself. And so we watched one morning a surgery that was dealing with cancer in the liver. And the surgeon happened to be one of Canada's top practitioners. He was a great in the field. He was all efficiency. Everything was going well. He was barking orders until the surgery came to a grinding halt because he thought he had cut the bile duct, which is a very important little organ. If severed, the patient usually doesn't survive. Meanwhile, I was just feet from the patient in the operating room with my little tape recorder. And I thought to myself, well, this surgeon is the epitome. He's the uber example of what we expect in an expert, whether it's a military leader or an executive or the foreman on the factory floor or a surgeon. Maybe there's more to the story of expertise. Indeed, there is. So just briefly backing up, it's important to understand or remember that we gain expertise by literally practice, experience, learning, so that our knowledge becomes second nature, right? So that therefore, when you encounter a problem or a difficult situation, you actually can recognize it as something you've encountered in the past, and then you can apply a solution that's worked in the past, that's been successful. That's the basis of the expertise, the first stage of expertise. We can do this, make knowledge second nature, because we create mental models and heuristic shortcut thinking in our minds that allows this all to happen very quickly. Now, this type of expertise, it's now known scientifically, is very impressive. It works, but only in predictable situations. You need routine in order to recognize what came before and apply old solutions. Now, but this is why very often in multiple different fields, many different fields, experts begin to rest too much on the past, on past practices, on past solutions. This will, rings a bell with everybody in everybody's field. What's really important, and actually one statistic bears this out, years of experience are only weakly or not correlated at all in many fields with skill and accuracy. So this is called routine expertise. And what's important is that now scientists have begun to discover only in recent years a new level of expertise called adaptive expertise. Now, this is where bells will ring for people in Lean and Kata environments. The adaptive expert, on average, spends more time diagnosing a new complex problem, not an old routine problem, a new complex problem, more time than novices do. They essentially know when and how to be unsure. Second, they widen their options, the framework of their diagnosis. 80% of strategic business decisions are made based on examining one option and running with it. Whereas the adaptive expert looks at multiple reasons. What's going on? What's gone wrong? What's going on here? Get to the root of the problem. And finally, they test and evaluate these options. They actually experiment, And so the upshot here is that diagnostics are critical before action can take place in a new situation. And that's where uncertainty falls in, comes into play. When something is new, unexpected, or ambiguous, that's when the human needs to be uncertain to calibrate their behavior to the new situation. I'll tell one tiny other little story. I think we have a minute. There's a skyscraper in Manhattan called the City Core Tower. Probably we've seen it before. It has an unusual design. It was designed to stand on stilts because there was his historic church on the corner. That building went up to great fanfare, and basically the lead engineer got a call from a student who said, according to my calculations and my professors in our class, that building has a great chance of collapsing under certain wind conditions because it stands on stilts. Well, the engineer dismissed that student, but then put down the phone and became an adaptive expert. He waded in, he recalculated. I call it inhabiting the question or doing the take two. And then he had to admit to his team and the lawyers and the owners that he was not sure if that building was as strong as they thought it to be. In essence, there were problems with the steel internal braces. Cost cutting had made the building weaker. And as well, the student was right. There were certain winds that if they hit, would make the building have a 1 in 55 chance to fall down. Big problem. It's been fixed. You can see that building in Midtown Manhattan today. But in essence, an adaptive expert, to conclude, it listens to the stories that the problem, not their assumptions, wants to tell. And this is an approach not just to a crisis or a problem, but to work itself and to leadership. It really allows you to improve the answer in the moment and the processes with which you approach your work. And by the way, the surgeon did not kill the patient. He was off target in the liver. The operation was a success, but he showed us how maybe we need to reconsider what we idolize in expertise today. Quickness and sureness has its limitations.
Thank you, Maggie. And gladly went okay with this. And Tracy, now getting to you. Obviously, you have something to add in what regards to this superior expertise.
Well,
right?
listening to
everything that Maggie said, right?
Yeah, listening to what Maggie said, and it was so great to hear that summary just now. I actually think that the Toyota Kata method of the coaching and improvement Kata together is actually a way to develop skillful uncertainty. Like that's what we're basically about, right? And maybe to create that adaptive expert in our, not only our leaders, but in everybody close to our work. You know, that test and evaluate and widen, sort of narrow the problem, but widen the options. I think that's what we try to do, is figure out what's actually going on. I also wanted to make the point that, especially to the Lean community, who has a lot of set knowledge, that we're seeking to extend. No, we're not getting rid of any of the things they know. Mike Rother often says Kata plays well with all of your Lean tools and all of your Lean approaches, and I think that's true. I wanted to mention a couple of companies or like examples. Of course, a lot of people never tell you the things that are making their company great, but there are a number of organizations that have presented publicly, so I feel comfortable mentioning them. Whether at Catacon Europe or perhaps at a meeting in the States. Some of them are really big companies that everybody will recognize, like General Electric or Volvo or Volkswagen. And some of them are smaller local companies, but still obviously led by people who understood they could become way more skillful as adaptive experts. And so if you looked up a company like Sigma Point in Canada, that's one of the first ones that read the original book and started to practice on their own and made tremendous changes in the way that they both communicate and accelerate their problem solving together. I'm thinking of a company in the Midwest in the United States that realized that their industry might be, they made big things for big industry, and they realized this may in fact, you know, start to go down as we look at climate change and look at alternative energies. And so they set themselves a one-year Kata challenge to determine what would they need to know? What would they have to do to actually be able to pivot in the future? And watching that happen was really, really inspiring. And they have also presented those things. So I think if people in the Lean community are interested, they'll find lots of YouTubes and examples. And of course, they could always contact the Kata School or a Kata community to be put in touch with companies that are practicing Kata every day.
No, yeah, the sound, yeah, it really connects the dots. Because yeah, here on as everybody here as a Lean practitioner and thinker would immediately make the link between uncertain and some of these Kata approaches. Mm-hmm. So with that comes this second question, which is trying to make the bridge between those. So Kata emphasizes the struggle. That struggle is not only okay, but a signal that you are learning, what you have just mentioned, Tracy. Yeah. So how does this sync with the new science of uncertainty? So getting back to you, Maggie.
Yes, I think it syncs very closely with that. And in fact, I was very surprised, you know, when I sort of discovered, emerging from doing all this research on the science of uncertainty, I had known about Lean and Kata, having lived in Japan for several years as a reporter, but yet I was happily surprised by all of the very close connections with the science of uncertainty and with these practices. And so I've talked about productive uncertainty as being key to adaptability in expertise and knowledge. There are many other different types of what I call uncertainty in action. Even the idea of pausing, which seems like dead time, is actually really essential to meaning making and to insight and to memory making, etc. This is a different kind of uncertainty in action. Now, another important mode of uncertainty, productive uncertainty, is in and around uncertainty as good stress. So basically, going back to that traffic jam scenario, if you're trying to make the meeting, you're not sure if you're going to get there, you immediately will understand that everybody would feel uneasy at that point. In fact, your heart might start to beat and your cortisol levels go up. What's happening here is that when you encounter something new, unexpected, or murky, the body and brain spring into action. And in a sense, you experience a stress response. Now, I've described a couple of classic stress symptoms that occur, but again, it's only recently that scientists have begun to unpack your brain on uncertainty. So what goes on here? When you're unsure, and this is really remarkable and maybe counterintuitive, when you're unsure, your working memory goes up, short-term working memory. Your focus sharpens and widens. Scientists call this curious eyes. You gain curious eyes. And then finally, your brain becomes highly receptive to new information. So one wonderful study out of Europe actually studied CEOs amidst a big expansion in the EU marketplace about a decade ago. And they found that the CEOs, the executives who approached this challenge thinking they knew just what to do. They were in control. They thought it was going to be bad or good for their company. They were the ones who tended to do very little at all over the course of the next year to respond to this huge change in the marketplace. Whereas to this researcher's shock, the ambivalent CEOs, the ones who weren't sure whether this would be bad or good for their company, in advance, then turned out to be more inclusive. They sought multiple perspectives from other people, and they were more resourceful. They did inventive, innovative things. So this kind of good stress of uncertainty helps us attune to our environment, to the nuances and the possibilities. Scientists call this good stress arousal, and I call it wakefulness. And one scientist told me, it's the brain, uncertainty is the brain telling itself there's something to be learned here. It's basically a signal. And just one last important point is, this is very different. It's distinct from the fear response. When you are afraid, a different stress system kicks in. The fear response is a shutting down cognitively. So when you're afraid of not making the meeting or the EU marketplace changes, when you're rattled, when you're afraid, basically you can do fight or flight or primitive kind of reactions, but you're not thinking well. In fact, blood races away from the brain when you're fearful, whereas the arousal of uncertainty is putting you on your toes and readying you to learn and to perform. So it's really important to understand that the discomfort that we might feel in and around uncertainty is something to lean into, no pun intended, but just go for it rather than retreat or it. And I can also talk about strategies to avert fear and lean into uncertainty, but I'm going to hand it over to Tracy. I think you have maybe a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that as somebody who's been practicing the Improvement Kata and Coaching Kata for more than 10 years, one of the things that's kind of a benefit of learning what to do when you don't know, or you feel that curious excitement, if you're lucky, of uncertainty. One of the benefits that we hear from coaches every week, and I'm associated with several big coach groups, is that it's a calm feeling. Like for me, one of the most biggest surprises was just how calm I feel when I see an obstacle or I don't know. And there's a very liberating feeling. I think a lot of lean experts might be asked constantly to give answers. But when you're allowed to say, I don't know, let's find out together, or we know what to do to find out. I think that's an amazing feeling. And Maggie, I wondered if you'd talk a little bit about the feeling side.
Yes, and I think perhaps not to read into what you're saying, but I would imagine the calm is a sense of being able to manage, able to look into the unknown, not calm as in I'm asleep on the couch.
No, but it's like, it's not fear. It's like, okay, right. I know what to do. Let's start a run chart. Let's make a problem statement. Here, we can do this. It's really much feeling of capability.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, uncertainty, people who are open to uncertainty and who are productively approach uncertainty well, all of what we're talking about today, actually have more higher levels of happenstance skill, which is a career-oriented skill, ability to be effective and confident when things are changing. That's a kind of new term in career development, happenstance skill. People who are open to and able to lean into uncertainty and not be afraid of it or anxious about it are far more, that's more linked to mental well-being and actual resilience. So that there are now treatments and interventions going on around the world to treat anxiety, to help people cope with huge challenges just by boosting their openness, or AKA tolerance of the unknown. So this feeling is really about being on your toes. And it's so interesting that you mentioned the word liberating, because I've talked to doctors who have been trained in, becoming more adept at uncertainty. I've talked to psychologists who are more, who are learning more about the gifts of uncertainty and teaching their patients and clients to do that. And and roboticists who are actually teaching robots to be unsure and learning more from them themselves. All of them use the word liberating. When you can face the world with curiosity and wonder, curiosity and wonder, not fear, you feel liberated, and I feel it myself.
Maggie, well, if we are about to wrap up, but I have a takeaway from this session. It's uncertainty is not fear, is a signal to learn, and in itself is a skill, right? So this is so great for the Lean community to feel that uncertainty is not failure, okay? Is not a weak point in our kind of profile, is in fact a strength that makes us different. And that is irrelevant of the maturity of our professional journey. So we are kind of 4 minutes to go.
Sergio, can I just say, just quickly add in there to the Lean community, that the Toyota Kata offers a way for you to learn and practice uncertainty, right? It's a very productive way to learn and practice.
Yeah, indeed. For the ones that Kata is also a new word on this session, out of this session, please, like Tracy just mentioned, go and look for it. Just Google it. Okay, lots to learn from Kata coaching and Kata improvement. So we have some questions here. I would also kind of, I have the book just for everybody to know what Maggie's book cover looks like. If you want to buy it, I have read it. So I have here something that comes out of my reading. Is that okay, Maggie, for you?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So, introduction, page 25. At a given point you wrote, and I quote, "Most of all, we can discover uncertainty both as a remarkable cognitive tool, in effect a skill for good thinking, and as a critical time and space that set us on the fertile edge of what we do not know." And then later on, there is a quote from Paul Henn, a physician scientist, that says, "We don't have a home run magic bullet for this. We can't inject all these, bottle it up, and put it into some easy intervention." But again, linking to the Lean practitioner community, we know that this is a skill, so that must be observable, recognizable, measured. So that's at least what a Lean guy expects, and what a Lean guy would need to experiment. So what are some of the signs that you, a colleague of ours, a team, that are being skillfully productive? What can you tell us about that? And then we'll move to one of the last Q&A questions that we have here from our participants.
Yeah, just briefly.
30 seconds, Maggie.
Just briefly, there are, there's a lot of work now on assessing productive, skillful uncertainty in many, many different fields. The work is new, but I would say, one little thing takeaway here is to be wise. Wise is a way we can understand how to see productive uncertainty in action in our team, in our organization, etc. What do I mean by wise? A productive, skillful person in uncertainty is willing to lean into the good stress of uncertainty and sees it as a challenge, not a threat. Wise, they inhabit a new and unexpected questions. They take a second look. they see multiple options. They widen the frame of the problem. And E, they evaluate, test, and experiment with those options. So be wise. If you look for these signs of willingness, inhabiting questions, seeing multiple options, and evaluating and testing experiment, you'll be seeing uncertainty in action in positive ways, and you will see performance gains as a result.
That is so great. And we have Christopher back on the main
Yay,
stage.
I'm back.
Get us out of here. So thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
everybody,
Sergio.
be
Thank you, Maggie,
wise.
Tracy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So now